This is the Yamaha XSR700 Legacy, and I think it's fair to say it's pretty light on features. But thing is, despite that, I've been really enjoying riding it for the past week or two, and so today we're going to take it out for a spin and I'll tell you exactly why. But before we get started, a huge thanks to Kalimoto for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video. Their awesome app means that even on a very basic bike like this, you can still add navigation to your cockpit, and the best thing is, it's motorcycle specific. Simply choose the destination and how twisty you want the roads to be, and it will seek out the best biking roads using their own dedicated algorithm to make sure the boring straight stuff is as few and far between as possible. You've even got an awesome feature which allows you to just give a general compass heading, the length of the ride, and again how twisty you want the roads to be, and it'll plan a bespoke loop for you with those exact parameters. Genuinely, I love using this app, and of course it's great when you're on a tour and you're trying to find good roads in places you've never been before, but equally it's a nice way to mix up your local routes and find some new combinations to keep things fresh. So do check out the link down in the description below to find out more, and you'll also find down there a couple of codes, one for a free trial for their premium membership and another for 10% off if you do decide to sign up. So look, what makes me say that this bike is so simple? Well, I think a quick look in the cockpit will tell you pretty much everything that you need to know. You see, it's really common nowadays, even on middleweight bikes at a relatively affordable price point, to get a full TFT display with all the latest bells and whistles and numerous buttons on the switchgear with which you have to control it all. This bike though, it just sticks with a relatively simple inverted LCD display that pretty much just contains the basics, and as for the switchgear, well, it's lights and indicators and the starter hazards. That's pretty much it. I mean, one of the reasons that they can afford to have so little in the way of tech in the cockpit is because there's so little in the way of tech under the hood as well. It's an old school cable throttle, so there are no riding modes to speak of. You've got no traction control either, no wheelie control, no 6-axis inertial measurement unit, no engine braking or anything like that. And actually, it's pretty much just ABS, which they have to fit in order to be able to sell the bike, and then just you and the throttle. Even beyond that as well, there are so many features you're used to seeing on bikes, like quick shifters. You know, that's available on some of the other CP2 bikes, but not this one. Connectivity with the dash, so you can get navigation, phone calls, and media and stuff like that. And also, there's no slip assist clutch on this bike, which is something that you're used to seeing on pretty much all bikes now. Basically, if you're a bit clumsy with your rev matching, or don't rev match at all and just let the clutch out, you will get that rear wheel skipping and hopping as it locks up. But look, despite looking pretty light on features versus many other bikes in this part of the market in 2024, the XSR700 Legacy, for me, is still an absolute joy to ride. One of my favourite things about it is the CP2 parallel twin engine, which has been a dependable, versatile workhorse for Yamaha for many years now. And while at 72 horsepower it's not the most powerful in the middleweight category nowadays, the snappiness and direct throttle response mean it's much more playful and entertaining than the spec sheet might suggest. Then there's the sound. And look, a parallel twin with a 270-degree crank has become perhaps a little too commonplace now, with almost every major manufacturer offering an engine in this configuration, but this particular press bike is fitted with the Akropovich high exhaust accessory, and I will say it definitely adds to the feeling of fun out on the road. Now, admittedly, it's the best part of £2,000, which really is rather a lot for a sub £9,000 bike. But on the flip side, it is pretty rare at the moment to get an official accessory exhaust that actually makes a significant difference to the sound of the bike. Most, in my experience, are only marginally louder, and you could argue they mainly exist for the purpose of improving the aesthetics. This one, though, has a bit more snarl, definitely more bass, and gives you plenty of crackles and pops
but on deceleration, the combination of which is very pleasant on the ear if you like that sort of thing, which personally I most certainly do.
Now, braking might not be, in terms of the hardware, you know, the top spec stuff. You've got Advix brakes, which Yamaha use quite widely. They're 4-piston, twin discs up front, 298mm discs, but I gotta say, there's plenty of power there, plenty of feel, and for me, another, you know, good point of this bike from a mechanical perspective. One of the factors that probably helps with that is the pretty slim wet weight. So I think this bike comes in at 190 kilograms, fully fueled up. And so yeah, not a particularly big, cumbersome, heavy bike to stop. And that also comes into its own when it comes to handling and low speed work and how easy this bike feels to just generally get on with. Also pleasant, I'd say, from a day-to-day perspective as well, is this riding position, which, although this is predominantly a road bike, is very scrambler inspired. So you've got a fairly tall seat height at 855mm, so a bit above what you'd normally see for like a naked bike. You've got big wide bars with this handlebar brace that I've fitted my quad lock to, and again, that's lots of leverage, a commanding position. You're sat very upright, and I also like the off-road style grippy foot pegs, lots of surface area. You've got the rubbers in there as well to keep the vibes down. And so yes, a comfy bike that's lots of fun, and that for me is a great combination. In fact, I'd also say the lack of technology here, the lack of distractions, the lack of notifications, the lack of colors, the lack of buttons, all allows you, I think, to really hone in and focus and pay all of your attention to how good this bike is to ride, how fun it is, how great it sounds, like I say. And look, there is a place for technology, and I do like techie features on bikes. I equally enjoy testing those sorts of bikes and seeing what's new and whether it makes any difference to how convenient it feels. But it is a little bit refreshing to ride something as basic like this in 2024. And, has to be said, I mean, I could dedicate a whole video to this, but it's a great looking bike as well. And that, for me, is another one of the fundamental principles that makes a bike pleasant to own, pleasant to be around, and fun to ride. Admittedly, it isn't quite as, you know, swish as something like a Triumph Street Scrambler or something like that, where it's been designed from the ground up to be a beautiful retro looking bike, because this has inherited a lot of how it looks from the MT-07, so they've more so adapted it into a semi-retro style. But I think, especially in this Legacy edition, the end result is pretty pleasing on the eyes, and there's a lot to be said for the gold wheels, the slightly rugged accessories, the speed blocks on the tank, and the brushed aluminium. And so yeah, I reckon it's not bad at all. So as you can probably tell, I really have been enjoying this bike, but there are a few minor niggles you should probably be aware of before you think about buying one. Some of it is pretty easy to fix, like I don't really love these off-road style grips. They feel a bit lumpy with the sort of ridges around them, so that's something personally I'd swap out. And also the Pirelli MT60 RS tyres, you know, they look good for this sort of image, but they probably wouldn't be my choice on the road. And so as soon as they wore out, I said this with the Svartpilen 801 the other day, I'd probably stick something a little more road biased on them to really enjoy the bike to its full potential. One area in which it does feel a little bit budget though is the suspension. It's not that supple on the fork, and then it's a little bit soft and bouncy on the rear, and while you probably expect that for a lot of bikes at this price point, it does detract from the riding experience a little bit, and it's maybe something I'd look at sorting out. I mean, Yamaha do have a rather nice selection of Öhlins upgrades for this bike on their configurator, but you're looking at, you know, at least $1,000 if you did the fork and shock, and then combined with the Akrapovic exhaust system, which is nearly $2,000. You know, if you fitted all that stuff, you'd be pushing this bike up to a price point where there's a lot of other good stuff you could buy. You see, this bike actually starts at £8,916, which is about 700 quid more than the standard XSR700, and also about 1,400 quid more than the MT-07, which it's heavily based upon and ultimately is going to ride pretty much the same. And also you got to consider, you know, I just mentioned the Svartpilen 801. This isn't that far off. It's about 1,500 quid difference, and with that bike you get quite a bit more power with 105 horsepower peak WP Apex suspension, which is fully adjustable, and for some people you might enjoy the TFT display with absolutely loads of techie features like lean sensitive traction control, wheelie control, a whole bunch of riding modes, and all the connectivity stuff that we've sort of come to expect these days. Thing is though, if you're not really a fan of those sort of features, then it really won't make any difference because you're not going to use them. I feel like this bike is becoming a fairly rare breed in 2024, and there aren't many this simple, and it looks like that might be about to change with the new Tenere 700 spy shots we saw a couple of weeks back, where we spotted on the right hand switchgear a mode button and a ride-by-wire throttle. So maybe all of the CP2 bikes are going to become a bit more techie in the next year or two to come. And so yeah, if you are a fan of the simplistic, minimal, almost pure riding experience that this sort of bike offers, then snapping one up fairly soon might be a pretty good idea.
As always though, I'd love to know what you think of the bike, so do let me know down in the comments below, and I'll also leave my review of the bigger, more sporty sibling, the XSR900, on the screen now so you can give it a click and give it a watch in case you haven't already. Hit subscribe as well if you want to see more of the latest motorcycle reviews like this right here on YouTube. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.